frigid temperatures. We got a cold spell blowing through.
Our water froze.
Our water froze. Here we are. We are in Squamish right now. I think I got a good Squamish Sasquatch story for y'all. You can just watch us chopping wood and listen to this story. Hey, all my Renaissance men and women. We are now back at home, even though you're watching us out in the bush chopping the wood. We are at home, curled up by the fire. You can hear it crackling in the background. Just wanted to read a couple stories. Looks like I put a candle or something in the fire. You can hear it sizzling. Anyway, I wanted to read a couple stories out of John Green's book. It's about Sasquatch being seen in and around roads, I guess highways, forest roads, things like that. There's a couple stories out of the US, and since we're in Squamish, another one of the stories is in Squamish, just north of Squamish, British Columbia. The story that starts it all does not need to be a spectacular one. In March 1969, a man who was on the road early in the morning going fishing reported seeing a hair-covered upright creature run across the highway on the north side of the Columbia River near Stevenson, Washington. He had no chance to study it, and it didn't do anything except bound up the cut bank and disappear in the trees. The story reached the media, however, and all sorts of people combed the adjacent hillside looking for tracks in what remained of the winter snow. They found a few, one of which was good enough for the sheriff to cast. It was this incident that led the adoption of the famous Squamish County bylaw setting a $10,000 fine for shooting one of the creatures. There were two more sightings on the same stretch of road that year, both by women driving at night. Within the next year or so, there were two more reports right there, and some others close by. The year 1969 was the busiest in Washington, with 39 reports, most I have on record for any one state in a single year. It was also the busiest year for reports in British Columbia, with 14, and 4 sightings, though not total reports, from California. There has never been another year like it on the Pacific coast, where there were 87 reports altogether. It's quite a lot of reports, 87 along the Pacific coast. That's including British Columbia, California, and Washington. The closest to that total in any other year was 54 in 1970, followed by 50 in 1968. Part of the explanation lies in the fact that those are the 3 years following the public release of the Patterson movie. But the big impact of that was in 1968, not 1969. Assuming that the movie was a major factor involved, it could be because increased interest in the subject resulted in more reports reaching someone who could record them. Or it could be because the movie simulated a lot of people to imagine things or to make up stories. What do you guys think of the Patterson Gimlin footage? Do you believe it to be fake, a man in a costume, or do you believe it to be authentic? I personally believe it to be 100% authentic. Here's a quick little clip of it right now. If the latter were the case, however, there would be no apparent reasons for the imaginings or fabrications to take account of the seasons. And the first 2 months of 1969 hardly produced any reports at all. In general, there have been many more reports in the years since the movie than in the years before. But that is only to be expected. Since the movie got a lot of people started digging up information, it must have made much more likely that witnesses would realize that they have seen something real. Instead of wondering if they were losing their marbles, the overall total of 119 reports that I have for 1969 was not exceeded until 1975 and 1976, by which time a sustainable proportion were coming from the states east of the Rockies, while reports on the West Coast average little more than half the 1969 total. One interesting point about the reports from the eastern United States is that they were less numerous in 1968 and 1969 and 1970 than in 2 years before or any year since. If the movie publicly stirred up a lot of imaginary reports in the rest of the country in those years, it didn't do it on the eastern seaboard. Besides the flurry of activity in Squamish County in 1969, there was the Bighorn Dam incident in the reports from the Kootenay Plains Indians in Alberta, and the tracks and the sightings reports involved the cripple foot at Bossburg, Washington, and also a flare-up of activity around Oroville, California. Getting back to the road sightings, they usually do not involve observations of interesting behavior, but there are a few cases in which the creature was seen doing something out of the ordinary. In 1974, as a result of a radio interview, I received a letter from a man at Rockaway, Oregon, who told of seeing a pair of Sasquatches on an old Highway 99 south of Shasta, California, while driving home from San Francisco one afternoon in the spring of 1947. The road at the time was apparently no superhighway, because he said that on rounding a curve and seeing a tall object beside a blacktop, he thought it was a post indicating a washout, and stepped out to study the road ahead before proceeding. Neither he nor his wife could see anything wrong with the road. But before he got going again, the post stepped out onto the road, started to cross, and then walking at an angle towards the car. However, there was still another object of the same size and shape standing where the first one had been. My informant estimates the creature's height at 8 or 9 feet tall, saying that he is 6 feet tall and could easily have walked under its arms. It came right up to the car and looked at them, then went over and looked at the bank on the other side of the road, returned to the other creature and took it by the arm, coming back to the same spot where it had inspected. It then helped the second animal, which they could see was a female, up onto the bank. She waited until the male also stepped up, and then they each put an arm around each other and walked about 100 yards over into the trees. He said both creatures were covered with long hair, reddish brown, at the ends of the light near the body. They stood very straight. The eyes of the male, which had peered into the car, were black, with no whites showing. The female never turned her head their way. That is the only report that I am aware of involving affectionate behaviors between two such creatures. Another story of particular interest was told to me by a highway maintenance foreman in British Columbia, who reported to his superintendent that he had seen an unusual animal on the road north of Squamish on the afternoon of 1970. The superintendent contacted the provincial museum, and word was passed along to me. Here's a part of the transcript of my interview with him a few days later. I came around a slight curve in the road, and there was an animal on all fours facing away from me. A large hairy animal. I thought at first it was a bear. As I drew closer, it turned sideways and got up on its hind legs and ran across the road in an upright position. I knew then it was definitely not a bear. It was a human-like animal, but not monkey type appearance. So now we're going to go through the questions and answers. So this is John Green questioning the maintenance foreman from Squamish, British Columbia. Here's John Green's questions, and then we'll follow with the answers. How big did it appear to be, says John. It was 7 feet tall, at least 7 feet and 250 pounds. Very prominent stomach. What color was it? It was reddish brown, pretty well all over the body, from the shoulders down. The head was a darker brown hair, but not quite as long as the rest of the body. On the head was not much more than a medium type crew cut. It was not like flat at the top or anything. It was all the same length, like the back of its head and the top of its head. It was like a all-rounded type haircut. And on the body was very shaggy, about 4 inches long, like a bear. You said it was a monkey type thing? Sorry, he said it was human-like, but had a monkey-type appearance. Sorry for that mistake there. And John Green continues to ask the foreman, you said it was a monkey-type thing? Just what were you referring to? Well, just in general appearance of the thing. A large monkey, and definitely not a bear. It didn't have a bear's face. It had more of a flat face like a person or a monkey. Its face was much lighter colored than its body hair, and definitely lighter than the head hair, and it appeared to be almost hairless, I would say. How far away would you be? When I first noticed it, I would say I would probably be 200 to 300 feet, and when I slowed down to a final complete stop to have a look at this thing that I thought was a bear, I wanted to have a good look. I would say approximately 100 feet when I stopped to watch the animal. How long do you think it stayed before it started across the road? Not long at all. It either fell off a bank or it fell on the shoulder of the road and picked itself up immediately and just scurried right across the road up the bank here on the other side in the right upright position like a man would run. And it did run and didn't waste any time at all. Did it move very fast? Quite quickly. Also, it looked at me when it was standing up and pretty well running all the way across the road. But the first impression I got that it was either terrified or very angry, the expression on its face. And then I was terrified, actually, because it was something you don't expect to see. Solid day's work.
This will be interesting, trying to get down this icy.
Whoa! Shit!
Perfect example. We got stuff up here and actually started sliding backwards. Now we've got all this weight here to haul down the mountain. And you can see the ice patches from here. So we're going to have to take it really slow.
Yeah, that corner right there is nothing but a sheet of ice. Got the Gladiator loaded up. That's our max that we're taking. All that weight is not going to help
Okay
with the sliding. Yeah, it's fine.
Actually, okay.
Our chainsaw blade is kaput again. Anybody knows a good automatic chainsaw blade sharpener? Let me know in the comments. I hate doing it by hand, like many. Well, we got some more trees here if we want to come back later in the winter. We're just trying to stay warm through this cold spell going on here in British Columbia.
Nala, come. Come on. The other way. Come here. Good girl. How's it feel with the weight?
Feels heavy. Love you all. Love you, Mom. Skyly. Don't make it out of this.
Yeah, but that scared me
because we were sliding backwards.
when your two tires there, your back one and the front one, weren't moving. They were just sliding. Didn't you feel that? Oh my god, you have to check out the footage.
Could you see the arms or forelimbs distinctly? Yes, it definitely had arms, quite long arms in proportion to its body. I would say they were longer than a man's to his body. It definitely had hands. I'm not sure how many fingers, but it did have hands. In the right hand, it was carrying what appeared to be a fish, a 10-inch fish. How was it carrying it? It had the hand wrapped around the fish, and the head was on one side and a length of the back and the tail on the other side. The front and back of its hand, and it had its fist closed around the fish. Could you see it well enough to be sure that's what it was? I would definitely say that is what the animal was carrying. Did it use its hands at all while moving? Its hands swung along when it was running across the road, and when it was climbing the bank, it did use its left hand a couple of times. It bent slightly forward like a man would do and assist itself and balance itself up the incline with its left hand, still holding the fish in its right hand. How did the length of the legs seem in proportion to the rest of the body? They were about comparable to a man's legs. Its legs were not overly long or short for the size of the animal. It did have a very prominent stomach. That is what I did notice. Were the limbs slim or heavy built? Very sturdy type build, but hairy as well. So there would be no way to tell whether it had terrific muscles, but sturdy. A very sturdy animal. What was its neck like? John asked. Didn't have a great deal of neck at all. The head just kind of sat on the shoulders. Could you tell if it was male or female? There wasn't any sign, or at least there was no evidence of sex that I noticed. Following the taping of that interview, we tried to re-enhance the incident with the foreman in his pickup where he had stopped before while I ran across the road at the point where the animal had been. He then had second thoughts about his estimate of size I am over 6 feet, and he said the animal had looked half again as big as I did. That would also indicate a much more sustainable sized fish. Nearest water is a river running far down below the road in a steep canyon. So if the creature was indeed carrying a fish, it seems probable that it was not for its own consumption. Okay, we're going to cut that off there. That again was the encounter that John Green investigated out of Squamish, British Columbia. Have you guys ever seen a Sasquatch cross a road, forest road, highway? If you have, and you want your encounter shared on the channel, email me at livingwithsasquatch@gmail.com. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe. And cheers for now.
All good. I said it's all good. Everything good.
You good?
Yeah. Got my feet hooked on. Holding on with my feet. Oh, we're coming up to some ice here. You got lots of ice coming up here on the...
Storm's crying for you. Okay, we're back on the main road. Now we're going to head back to civilization. I want to stay out here all day, maybe for a few days, but gotta get back and get chopping wood.